On this week's Glanbia Ireland Dairy Focus Vodcast, we'll go through some tips and advice in regards to autumn grassland management and closing out our platform for the year. And we'll also get the latest breeding season update from Dovea Genetics on how the breeding season went in the vast majority of farms right across the region. In regards to grassland management, the focus now shifts to setting the platform up for spring 2021 and getting the basics right in this closing period. Ideally, we want to start looking at our autumn rotation planner, a 60-40 rotation planner, where the target is to have 60% of the platform grazed by November 1st, and this should be up on 70% for our more heavily stocked farms or our heavier ground type farms. When it comes to closing paddocks, it's good to keep in mind that the paddocks you close first will not be the paddocks that will be grazed first next spring. Those paddocks that are first closed will have heavier covers. So ideally we're not going to graze those until we have a higher amount of mouth power and cows out at grass next spring. So we won't be grazing them as our first grazed paddocks. So again, ideally further away from the parlour, larger paddocks, etc. Whereas the paddocks we close from mid-October onward, those would be our first grazed paddocks with lighter covers, and ideally we want them close to the yard with very good infrastructure and well sheltered and not that heavy a cover on come next spring when we don't have the full herd grazing at that time of turnout. And when we're talking about closing up paddocks, these paddocks ideally once closed should not be grazed again until spring 2021. The basics come into play here and when weather deteriorates, spring condition or spring advice comes into practice. We're talking about hitting 4 centimetre residuals, so we're not carrying dead material over that winter period. We're talking about using strip wires or allocation grazing in order to up utilisation, especially where a buffer feed or as might be offered on farm, to optimise grass intakes and ensure that we're getting a good clean out in the sward. And also then picking specific paddocks that are suitable to the weather conditions that are playing out on farm. Now we'll hear from Dovea Genetics.
Today we're on the farm of Anthony Murphy outside Dungarvan in County Waterford. Anthony is currently milking 140 cows. He's a member of the 2020 Club, and I suppose his plan is to take 70 to 80 beef calves the whole way to beef on a 20-month system annually. I suppose you can see his bunch of weanlings here. All the Belgian Blues are sired by the Dovea bulls, and some of the Anguses are. He also has 2 Angus sweeper bulls to mop up after AI. The Belgian Blues here are sired by Norton Jaguar and Summel BB4611, and Jaguar is BB4085. The calves are currently getting no meal. Very good management on the farm. Fresh grass every 10 days. And I suppose you can see the calves are thriving quite well. Regarding the 20-month system, the last bunch of stores to start meal feeding are here on this outblock, and I suppose the rest are at home being finished currently. It's a very simple system. He plans to have everything gone before the second winter, and I think by using AI and getting better genetics into his herd, that's facilitating him to do that. A lot of his store cattle are up on 500 kilos now, both the Anguses and the Blues. Now there is some Frisian cattle still here to go on to feed. They're a good square type Frisian. His cow type is pretty good. They're not extreme in any way, and I suppose he's doing a really good job here. When finishing your own, you can afford to use those better bulls, and I suppose you really need to use those better bulls to achieve profits from this system.
For more information on any of the topics covered in this week's Glanbia Ireland Dairy Focus Vodcast, log on to glanbiaconnect.com, contact your local Glanbia Ireland representative or call into your local branch.